the Cincinnati Bengals and first round pick Shamar Stewart are still back, still going back and forth with the contract dispute, as Shamar Stewart has missed a handful of OTA practices because of this. And I've read multiple articles, and it really comes down to certainly, of course, the language, of course, with it, but it's more specifically about defaults, about trying to put defaults in, every year of the contract, where they can basically try and get a loop around or a loophole of voiding guarantees because of certain things. And we'll get to that quickly about, in a few minutes, about a former NFL executive talking about his thoughts on the situation. But Shamar Stewart going to say, I'm not asking for anything crazy. I'm not asking for nothing. I just want things to be consistent. I just want consistent language, as in the past contracts. I just won't practice until I get that, end quote. So pretty blunt, self-explanatory, straightforward with that. Now, what does, again, going back to the defaults like I talked about a second ago, what is that? So Cincinnati wants to include a phrase that causes a default in the current year to trigger a default in all the remaining years. That was also, again, another one, I think, part of Kelsey Conway in the Cincinnati Enquirer that I read with that, and how that was pretty detailed nicely with that. And then also with the NFL executive, or former NFL executive, Andrew Brandt, going to say, quote, they're basically putting a default clause that says if a player defaults, and a default could be a breach like a discipline issue, a steroid or drug test issue, a morals clause issue, getting in trouble, being suspended, being fined, whatever. Default is defined as you can void future guarantees. Brandt would go on to say, in other words, if this happens in 1 year, you can say, well, year 2, 3, 4 are not guaranteed, and that is something the Bengals are trying to impose for their own president, where they can do it now going forward with all rookies and maybe even with veterans. Shamar Stewart agent has said, nope, no sir, because last year you didn't have the 17th pick, you had the 18th pick, and you didn't have that. And in the past years, players like Jamar Chase and Higgins didn't have that, or they didn't have that, unquote. And, that's what, again, really comes down to, is just about the default and the phrasing of putting, triggers in the contract, where if something minor happens, or what he laid out to, again, drug issues, steroid being suspended, off the field issues, that they can void it and kind of wipe their hands clean from it. And, this would sound perfect, or perfectly, I think normal for a lot of fans to hear that, because, just asking for athletes to be stand-up citizens and just being, normal and obeying the law, which is, I don't think should be too difficult it shouldn't be, I should say, because there's plenty of players that definitely don't do that. So it shouldn't be difficult to follow that. But with Cincinnati and their history about being cheap and how they've handled recent players with their contracts, it's certainly, there's a reason why I get Shamar Stewart and his agent has some concern and some, being a little hesitant to sign the contract with, look at his teammate across from him on the defensive line with Trey Hendrickson, with how he's been vocal of how his displeasure and how they've lied to him, how they've handled that situation. You look at Jamar Chase and T. Higgins as well, of how long that's played out as well. So again, I get why Shamar Stewart is hesitant with that. And I don't want to say I'm not 100% on either group. I think there is faults on both sides, because, certainly why I laid out with the Cincinnati and how the organization has been with, handing money out, or their, definitely their trouble to instantly kind of pay players that deserve it. I also look at Shamar Stewart, and I'm not saying right now this is detrimental to his growth and he is going to take a step back because of missing these handful of games. No, but I do think if this goes on for weeks and weeks and weeks, yes, it is going to add up very quickly, and it's going to put Shamar Stewart behind the 8 ball. It's going to put him back, farther back than where he's projected to be at the start of training camp, preseason, the regular season. And if he doesn't doesn't pop on people's TVs, or they watch him live, that there is going to be kind of pushback. There's going to be fans being vocal towards Shamar Stewart himself, towards Cincinnati, whether it was the choice to take him that high, or that controversial pick, in my opinion, that high, and certainly of how things have played out with. I don't see Shamar Stewart being a huge difference maker his rookie year. I think it is definitely going to be a rough season, I think, from at least for the pass rushing standpoint. But this just adds more unnecessary spotlight and controversy, and just more talking about the Bengals in a wrong light with this whole dispute. And it's certainly coming off of a defense that has been absolutely horrendous, that desperately needs that pass rush help. And again, I think it was very controversial. I don't think it was a really great pick for them to select Shamar Stewart that high in what their first round pick, I should say, when there was for me there was better players, more proven players, more ready now players that can instantly impact the defense as opposed to Shamar Stewart. I get because you're looking at the combine and the physical the traits. He is a freak of an athlete, but on tape, in terms of the pass rushing standpoint, the run defense is good. The pass rushing standpoint is awful. He's had 6 sacks in a total of 3 years, or exactly 2 sacks in each of the last 3 seasons. That is a big concern, and I think especially with Trey Hendrickson, and if he is gone at some point before the season starts, you're looking at Shamar Stewart to be that go-to guy, to be that replacement potentially. And again, I just don't see that if he misses a good portion of practices because of the ongoing contract dispute. And again, he's not on track of where they project him to, or he's behind the 8 ball. And again, if he doesn't flash instantly or makes plays right away at the pass rushing standpoint, that there is going to be concern with that, because I think there was not for myself, but more people who've analyzed their draft has been, it's been mixed emotions of, did they do were they great at drafting? I mean, they did focus a good amount on defense, which was certainly needed, absolutely. So from that standpoint, they did a great job with it. But just about the players they picked. And again, it goes for myself at least, with Shamar Stewart it's a high, but certainly a high risk, high reward player. But I just more look at the high risk standpoint. It's very worrisome. And again, with Shamar Stewart going in a situation where he may not be with Trey Hendrickson to start with the season, if he's potentially gone for however they're going to play out with that contract situation, that to me it's gonna be a very rough rookie season for all parties around with that. So we're going to see what happens with Cincinnati and what they want to do. The end results, we all know Shamar. For I'm not trying to make this seem like Shamar Stewart's gonna be off the team, something drastic or unprecedented is going to happen. Shamar Stewart will sign the contract. That's plain simple. He will sign a contract inevitably, and he'll be with the team and practicing and playing games. So we know the end result is going to be he will sign the contract. That's not me trying to speculate something crazy is going to happen. We all know that he's going to sign a contract, and then we'll move forward with our lives with this story. But it's just more about trying to navigate and get ourselves to that point of how long is it going to take. Is it going to be another couple weeks? Is it going to be another month he's going to miss? However that's going to be, that's only something I'm going to try and follow and try and keep an eye on as Shamar Stewart keeps missing practice, OTAs, and so forth, and seeing how much longer this goes, and see if what side's going to kind of crack under the pressure. Is Shamar Stewart kind of going to give in at some point and just go with the defaults, or is Cincinnati going to kind of be more flexible with the defaults and the clauses in the contract? So we'll see what happens throughout the next ongoing weeks and a couple month or two.